I'm just going up this water spout, y'all. Y'all, hope it don't rain.
The itsy bitsy spider climbed up the water spout. Down came the rain and washed the spider out. Out came the sun and dried up all the rain. So the itsy bitsy spider climbed up the spout again.
I'm just going up this water spout, y'all. Hope it don't rain. I'm an itsy bitsy spider. I'm also a good hider. Y'all ain't gonna find me.
The itsy bitsy spider climbed up the water spout. Down came the rain and washed the spider out. Out came the sun and dried up all the rain. So the itsy bitsy spider climbed up the spout again.
Going up this,
Up the spout again.
going up this.
Up the spout again.
Hello, welcome, zero viewers, to another episode of the Where's Itsy Bitsy Spider Kickstarter live stream series. I'm here promoting Where's Itsy Bitsy Spider. It's a search and find book. You can find it on Kickstarter. The campaign's doing pretty well. We're at about 60% funded and we're about 60% of the way through the campaign. So something's happening. Check it out. Look at these scenes. Big, detailed, busy scenes. All these characters defined in every scene of the book. And to promote it, I'm running another of these live stream podcasts that's got pretty much nothing to do with Itsy Bitsy Spider, but I'm here with my regular co-host, Dale Sipperley, Art Supply Gourmet. And today our very special guest is Mr. Adam Prosser. You put him in the big window there. Hello, Adam. Oh, hello, Adam. Hello, viewer.
Hello, hello.
Hello, anybody. Yes, hi. If you're
myself.
watching, please feel free to chime in the comments. And yes, so Adam, if you don't know him, Adam is my co-writer on Pewfell, the webcomic that I did for many years. Originally started as a black and white zine in the 90s, and I sort of did it in various forms until it sort of went as an online webcomic in the early 2000s. And then I did it as a daily strip, and it was pretty hard work. And I basically connected up with Adam as a writer. I put an ad. I think I'd seen some of Adam's writing. I put an ad on a message board saying I was looking for a writer. Adam responded, sent me some writing, and went from there. Well, like one thing after another, we tried it out, and it seemed to keep going. And we went along. It was kind of a bumpy process, and I think we'd like to talk a little bit about it. But I mean, it sort of started off, but by the end, we really sort of got it going along very nicely. I don't know why I said it was a bumpy process. I mean, like, yeah. Well, let's not get.
I mean, we came to fisticuffs multiple times during the process. Yes.
Yes, but in the end, it was kind of interesting working with somebody different. Anyway, so yes. So Dale asked us, a little more about you. Yes. So So why don't you tell us a bit more about yourself, Adam? Yeah. So you're from Canada.
Yes, from Canada. Yeah, I've been doing various web-related comic stuff for like 20 years now. I had hello, Tina. I had various webcomics. I had one called Night Shift for a while. I was doing one called Amazon Space Rangers and Freak You. They were kind of primitive. I've moved on to stuff. I sort of started working with Chuck. I was doing some scripts for him. It's his baby, it's his creation. But I contributed some gags basically. More recently, I've been doing stuff like I actually helped get together a bunch of my pals, and we did some comics anthologies called Strange Romance, of which there's 3 volumes and a little bonus volume as well, which ended up very good. Just like love stories, but they're all sci-fi, fantasy, horror, and genre stories. It was just an excuse to make a sci-fi, fantasy, horror anthology, but it came out pretty nice, I think. I've been doing my own comics. I had one comic called Lemuria, which is like a fantasy sword and sorcery comedy comic for a while. I was doing a webcomic for a while called Star Force Pentacle, which you can still see by Googling. It's at Comics Fury, although it was pretty good. That was a very weird. That was a bit one of my more ambitious projects. It was a space opera about magic, and it was also a spell that was an attempt to make the world better by activating it. It was very Grant Morrison, basically. So I just
yeah, you like Grant Morrison quite a bit, don't you?
I do, yeah. I'm a fan of Grant Morrison, and
Yes.
and yeah, it's that kind of thing where it's just and Alan Moore as well. Alan Moore did a comic called Promethea, which I liked. He really went on and on about magic with a K and so forth in that, and he sort of used superhero trappings as a springboard. I decided to do space
I brought up Alan Moore on the show a few times. I love him. Like 2000 AD, Judge Dredd. I sort of grew up reading that. So yes, that was definitely. But you didn't really encounter them till later, till they were working in the American market, right? Yeah.
I think Watchmen was actually the first Alan Moore thing
Watchmen,
I saw.
of course, yes.
But then I tracked down Swamp Thing, and I was really loving. One of the things he's done that I really like that isn't as well known is Supreme, which was essentially his.
Oh yes, you recommended that to me. I loved Supreme. Yeah, that was excellent.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was him.
Supreme, yes.
Him taking a character that Rob Liefeld created that was a ripoff of Superman and going, well, if you're going to rip off Superman, do it right. And he gave him like all the Silver Age nonsense that Superman had in the past, and did basically one of the great Superman runs. It was just with a character who wasn't technically Superman.
It's amazing because he does what Alan Moore does best, like playing with time. And so he does all the different eras of this character are drawn in the style and written in the style of the comics of that era. And, and then it becomes this sort of back and forth time travel crazy thing that like only Alan Moore can really do. Yeah.
Yeah. It was
what's the name of that comic?
Supreme.
Okay.
And if Alan Moore wasn't the only one,
very underrated. Yes.
Yeah.
And also
Alan Moore isn't the only one who's done
beyond. It's like I'm not Superman. It sort of goes beyond that. He's sort of better than Superman by the end.
And it should be noted, Supreme was done he was created by Rob Liefeld. Other people have done Supreme somewhat after him, but his is kind of the definitive run. There are trades floating around, although they're not really in print anymore. But yeah, it's really cool. And he builds, he had Rick Veitch doing a lot of it, and he would do the flashback issues drawn very carefully to look like Wayne Boring or the original Siegel and Schuster comics or whatever the era he was trying to imitate, which was really cool. Great. And he created a whole world around it. It was really cool. Anyway, but I
thought that was like one of the most amazing things that he's done, where he's really sort of playing his trick. Like he's got that little book, like short piece about writing comics, where he talks about like how time is the element in comics that has unique to comic is that the reader controls the time. The artist does somewhat, in the size of a panel or whatever, but ultimately more than any other medium, the reader can sort of move about and go back and forward through time. And so this book Supreme is all about that. You're sort of like going back and forward through it. And so I love that sort of, then it's like a sort of puzzle book or a maze book. I love a maze book that sort of sends you back and forth through the book.
Yeah. Well, then he did, I mentioned Promethea, and just like I say, it was kind of him ranting and doing, like, it was the idea of, if you're doing something in comics form, you're engaging with, you're engaging with the reader in a way, and that's how he says is magical, which I don't think I ever really understood exactly what he meant. But I tried to sort of explore that, and when I created my comic, Star Force Pinnacle, that's what I was doing. I was trying to sort of figure out what he meant by that, because I think that his definition of magic, or at least my interpretation of his definition of magic, is that it's a way of how you can shape the world using the creative arts through the minds of the readers. Essentially, I think that's what he's trying to do with something like Promethea. And so I tried to do the same thing with a webcomic called Star Force Pinnacle, which is a sci-fi magic comic. It was published as a webcomic, and it's a series of, and I did it in sort of a British style, like the way, for instance, V for Vendetta was published. And I know that a lot of British comics were published in little 5-page increments in comics like Warrior and things like that, and anthologies. So I tried to go for that. In fact, I specifically built it around the number 5. Pentacle, obviously, is a 5-pointed star, which is the magical symbol, and every chapter is 5 pages.
Oh yeah, I like that you sort of used to like that in Grant Morrison. I remember a couple of ones that you like We Three, and you like that one, the 7 things of
the 7 soldiers. Yeah.
the 7 soldiers. Yes. You like that.
Yeah.
You went
Yeah,
for
the
5
numerology has a bit of a factor in it there. Yeah, it's
Yes.
well, if you've ever heard of the Illuminatus trilogy by Robert Anton Wilson, he's got a whole and that sort of ties into magical thinking as well. And he's got a thing called the rule of 5s, because one of the characters is obsessed with the number 5 and believes that everything in the world can be traced back to the number 5, basically. And it's an example of something that just appears a pattern when you appears that starts to look for it and has all this significance, except maybe the significance is just that you are finding the significance in this by finding the number 5 in everything.
So I'm very skeptical. I don't think Dale buys into ridiculous theories like that.
Well, literally what it is when he finally completes it, it's like this character is like, oh yeah, the number 5 is here and here and here, and they reveal at the end, it's like, yeah, the number 5 is everywhere if you're creative enough in looking for the number 5, because you will see the number 5. Like that's the whole point. It's like, it's about pattern recognition essentially, and that's sort of what I was anyway. So the number 5 has that significance among what are called Discordians, who are this sort of group that kind of spun out of the Illuminatus trilogy. And I did a lot of notes I did a lot of references to Discordianism in the comic. But like I say, so everything is 5 page. Every chapter is 5 pages. 5 chapters go together to make a volume, like an issue of a comic. So 25 pages, and then there were 5 volumes. So it's 100. Like the total ended up being, I guess, 125 pages. Yeah, and I may come back and do more. At which point I have to do 5 collections of it.
yeah,
obviously.
You've got to multiply by 5 every time. It's not as bad as 10, I guess.
Yeah.
Adam, when you say 5 pages, do you mean 5 pieces of paper pages, or you're talking each front and back is 1 page?
No, each
2 pages.
piece of paper is a page. It was a web comic, so like a page.
We would use that format in Pewfell. I sort of like got to that format, and also like I like those sort of Judge Dredd stories, and all those writers would tend to write in a 5-page story. You'd get 5 pages a week.
Yeah,
it may go more or less, whatever. It's not a strict rule, but it's sort of like, that's like the sort of beat, like the notes in the bar or whatever.
Yeah. So, well, for me, it was a very strict rule. I had to stick to 5 pages.
Yeah, so you made it a very formal rule. Yeah.
I'm still unclear. So you're talking about if you were doing this in 11 by 17 Bristol and inking it, we're talking about 5 pieces of Bristol for the story, or 10 pieces?
No, 5. It would be 5.
Okay.
But that would just be a chapter. It wouldn't be the whole story.
Okay.
Obviously.
So one chapter, from my point of view, is 1 physical paper page and a half. No, wait, 2 physical paper pages and a half.
No, it's a comics page, and there's 5.
Dale's talking about he's talking about okay, when you have a piece of paper, it's printed on both sides. So
yeah, I understand.
Yes, you're right. It's 2.5 sheets.
Oh, sure.
Or 2.5 printed.
I mean, I've never published it in
3
physical.
Sheets, 5 sides.
I've never published it in physical form. So this is not.
Then you put 5 of those together to get a book.
Yeah. But I never did it physically, so it's all been online so far.
Yeah.
Okay, so 5 online pages.
Yeah.
Got it.
And I mean, like I say, 25 pages, like 5 of those go together to make it basically an issue. That's essentially, technically, a traditional comic page or comics issue is 24 pages. So mine's are 25 pages. I went 1 extra. And yeah, it's so basically it was a story about. It was I am a huge fan of Star Trek, and it was kind of based on the idea that. What Captain Kirk is doing is essentially magic. Every yes, live long and prosper. The classic Star Trek plot is that Captain Kirk comes down to a society that's all messed up, and it's in some kind of stultifying, rigid strait that's hurting people in some way, and it's because everything's being run by a giant evil computer, and so he talks the computer to death with logic, and the computer explodes, and it creates and it throws the society into chaos, but it's a beneficial chaos that they can then escape from the problems that they were having. And that's essentially, I decided to basically the story in the comic is that a girl named Mary Sue Maxwell, who basically is a cartoonist, and she just decides, well, I'll do some magic, and she does a magic spell, basically, hey, can we make the world better? And so a group of 5 intergalactic secret agents called the Pentacle come down, and they arrive they could beam down because she summoned them like a magical entity can. They couldn't do this before then, and it turns out there's an evil computer controlling Earth this entire time, run by a guy named Leon Strafe, who's a Silicon Valley genius billionaire. And there's been this computer running Earth for quite a while called the Demiurge, and they basically, now that they're here, they can basically fight it, and they essentially blow it up in the first issue, destroying Earth's civilization, and they escape into outer space to try and come back and fix Earth, essentially. But now that the computer's been destroyed, people on Earth can do magic again. So she wants to. They go off on a quest across the galaxy to find what's essentially the Holy Grail and bring it back to Earth and make everything better. So it's a pretty neat story, crazy stuff. So yeah, and they have
you
magic.
taken into account the time dilation effects of space travel, though?
No, you can travel.
There's nothing in the story that really takes that into account.
Well, in fact,
what
it is in this story is, I realized that, with the space opera, you always have to be able to travel faster than the speed of light, which is essentially magic. So that's what magic is. The main thing you can use, magic is very specific in this world, in my world. You can use it to go where you need to go or tell you what you need to do. But the main thing people use it for is to travel faster than the speed of light. You can open portals from one place to another using magic. And that includes sending your spaceship through a thing like a kind of a thing called mind space, which is where like raw imagination exists, and it also lets you do shortcuts across the galaxy. So
okay, I like it. Okay, so your magic system is well worked out.
Yes, yeah, and so and when you go in there, of course, like all kinds of crazy things can happen, and the first thing they say is like, well, nothing in here can hurt you. It's all imaginary. And then, of course, immediately they're attacked by something within mind space because, of course, it's not it's not harmless and something can hurt you in there. So I do basically a holodeck episode there. But yeah, it's all kind of riffing on Star Trek in that regard as a magical format. So I'm pretty proud of that. I came up.
Well, I love your epic ambitions. That's great. Yes, I mean, I always like to think in very epic terms of what kind of story. I know I had my idea for a magic story was that like we're on Earth, modern day Earth, but then like weird things happening and more weird magical things are happening. And the reason is that the dragons that used to live here, like the magic comes with them. So when they return, they've been off flying around in space. When they fly back to Earth, they start like every magic starts breaking out everywhere. And so like Earth like goes into this crazy magical place that's ruled by dragons. But it starts off like fairly normal, like Earth today.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of Alan Moore, have you ever read Miracle Man, as it's now known, or Marvel Man, as it was known at the time?
No, I don't think I ever did.
It goes a little bit into that. It's the idea of like it starts out with like the regular world, and this guy basically remembers he was a superhero, a Captain Marvel-esque superhero. He remembers his magic word, and by doing so, and he remembers having all these crazy adventures, but it turns out they were a virtual reality government program thing. But by existing in this world, he now starts to turn the world into a crazy superhero universe, and it slowly starts to evolve into something much stranger than our regular world. So it's a little bit of the same idea there. But yeah,
I think I have to do mine. Like I'm thinking I'll do it as a children's book now. Like in Sorry Mama from the Train. I like to never see that movie. Well, they finally wrote the same story, but one of them had written it as Danny DeVito wrote it as a children's book. So that made it okay.
I haven't seen that movie in a while, but yeah. So yeah, actually, that's now I know you talk about this on the live stream all the time, Chuck. But what can you tell me about Itsy Bitsy Spider? I've just
all right. Well, yes. So let me bring it back to Itsy Bitsy Spider. Thank you. That's good.
Segue. See, that's what I'm here for.
Your Bitcoin is in the. Your Bitcoin is being transferred. It's being mined as we speak.
Oh God, no.
So here it is. All right. Okay. Well, I'll go to Itsy Bitsy Spider. All right. So what can I say about it? Like, how did Pewfell influence Where's Itsy Bitsy Spider? Well, All right, yes, I can talk about that because there's definitely one scene in Pewfell that was very itsy bitsy spiderish, or like not search and findish. And I'll find that. So this is a scene that you wrote, I believe. Fall of Spire Castle. Here it is. Wait, yeah.
Nice.
I guess this is the power. I don't have any dialogue in it, but you can see Pewfell and Baron Sandy at the top running up to the castle, and the army of chaos attacking. Can I move it over there? So it's okay. There's Jackal leaning out the window.
Chuck, did you lay out the perspective for that or improvise it?
So yes, so probably a lot of my techniques. Let me do this. Okay. Oh, how about that? Well, okay. Hide this at the bottom. Yes. So did I do the perspective? Yes, probably some perspective. No, I probably improvised it. I don't know. Yeah. That I did. This is one that I redrew. I guess when we first did it, we did it smaller and black and white. But and I did a few crowd scenes over the years with Pewfell anyway. So that's maybe what led me to sort of start doing them. And then the first one, but then I did this one for the comic book guide to the mission. So I was, I talked about that. I was asked to do that one. Probably not long after we were doing Pewfell, and and it just came out like that. I didn't really plan it to be like that, but I wanted to put all these things in, and I guess that was sort of how I knew to do it. And then I started doing more and more of these things, and then, this book is largely consisted of scenes that I did for the Daily Mail newspaper the last 2 summers. So like this one, for example, so these were very sort of British-looking scenes. That was, in a market town. And then there are a few others I did for sort of magazines and things. But this was another Daily Mail one. Trafalgar Square. So, having done a bunch of these search and find books, after Pewfell, I went on and sort of kind of, I guess because my son was young, I went into children's book illustration and started really actively going after that. Although, I'd sort of been doing that. Yeah, I mean, I'd been doing that all along, I suppose, as well. Yeah. So
can I ask some technique questions?
Yes.
So when did you start doing Pewfell as a fanzine?
So I started doing that in probably like 1991 or probably 1991 or possibly 92. I don't know, somewhere around there.
And was that analog ink on paper?
Oh yeah. Well, it depends. Okay, yes. So I probably first started thinking of it, I think, in 91. I don't know. It sort of grew out like I played D&D with my friends, right? So the names of the characters and the looks of the characters were basically based on my friends, but I sort of changed the characters and the personalities quite a lot. But I sort of knew how to do them, so I sort of had some idea of who the main characters were, and the idea was to do like D&D basic characters, because my idea is always like, I don't know, I always sort of thought about like a future audience. I sort of thought, well, some people like this, but I think like someday there's going to be more like D&D, and then then these things are going to be more readily understood that he's a wizard. And it's funny, I didn't like I always like I didn't like to sort of take it too far off that sort of fundamental premise, but I also wanted to take it like where can you sort of go where you don't really sort of take it off that fundamental premise of that they're a wizard, a cleric, a thief, a fighter,
Well, had you drawn strips before Pewfell?
So yes, I used to do a strip like earlier. I did like this character Ferdinand the Frog that I did like as a, I mean, among other things, but he was like kind of a main character, more autobiographical character that I did for a while. But I didn't, I have my sort of health issues, my disabilities, and like some of those Ferdinand stories towards the end started going a little bit into like some of like the difficult things that I was sort of dealing with, and I didn't really like telling those stories. a lot. You know, it's sort of difficult, like revealing it. You know, like there's someone like Maya Kobabe who's written Gender Queer, which is like a fantastic book. You know, I talked to her a bit about it because there were some things in there that sort of resonated with me, even though that's not my issue, it's not like gender related, but you know, disability sort of affects me in different ways. And so I was just, you know, she was like, oh, you know, you should write that. But I never could, you know, I still couldn't. I don't know. I've thought about it, but, you know, the trouble is it goes sort of dark. It's a bit like being a political cartoonist. I can never really be like a dark, you know, like do the darks. I think to do it well, you have to be like very dark or sort of very honest or something. And I don't know.
No, to be a political cartoonist, you have to like write the names of everything on everything so that people can tell. Wall, tree, dog, the concept of war. Yes.
I mean, there's some great political cartoonists. It's great. I mean, I love like Rob Rogers in particular, and I met Cal, and he's fantastic. I love his work, and you know, and he's So like I was like I like fantasy and like gaming and all this sort of stuff. So you know, like gaming and puzzles, you know, that's always what I enjoy. You know, like pop culture stuff. You know, but I never wanted to do any. I don't know. It was braining me that I'd not to copy, so I never really want. Although I like, you know, I would certainly do drawings of like Judge Dredd or Batman or whatever when I was younger, but I would never really like very seriously try to draw those characters that much. And it wasn't really what my interest was in. My interest was always in like inventing stuff. And then, you know, yes. So the aspect of Pewfell was to sort of, you know, create this thing where it's like, yes, they're everyday sort of lives of them and, you know, whatever. But, you know, at some point I like writing, like it was more about the art as well and doing it every day and like the writing. So that's why I sort of hooked up with Adam at some point. It's like I had a sort of initial story that I sort of wanted to do in my head, that sort of very first story arc that I did. And I sort of got to, I was like, okay, it was a bit silly, but I did it. You know, I had some fun on the way and I got to the end, but I was like, I didn't really sort of think of this as a story. And I felt like I need to work with a writer. You know, no, Adam, you're a bit younger than me, but you know, you were doing some web comics, and I like what you were doing. You were doing Amazon Space Rangers, which I thought, again, you were doing. I think you sort of disowned that. But, and you also doing this one like Night of the Museum sort of thing. You invented Night of the Museum. With, you had that one as well. Like yes. Which also was very, you know, they were both sort of funny and I liked them both. And I was like, oh, you know, those two things together, that's somewhere like where I want Pewfell to be, you know, this sort of mixture of this sort of, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to defend it. It's hard to defend some of the things that like, you know, like with the Me Too movement, everything. I don't think I went too far with anything. I think I was good. I had a lot of feminists in the time that liked it, you know, that Girl-O-Matic, you know, I had some good reviews, Sequential Tart. They liked it. But later on, I sort of got a bit dinged for sort of portrayal of Tina, and I sort of did sort of give it a bit into sort of getting a little more sort of sexy with her in a way, but I don't know, it's very hard because I was trying to be sort of post that.
Well, Chuck, so in
I'm probably too ahead of my time there. I don't know. You know.
In 91, you started doing this as a zine, and I remember walking by your table in the 90s at the Alternative Press Expo. Is that how you shared this work with people? Was it primarily a zine?
Yes, before that, so in England I did it as a zine, like just a black and white photocopied zine. So I think, you know, I had created one before I moved. I moved here in 1995. So before I had left England, I created at least one sort of black and white photocopied zine that I'd made some sort of attempt to, like there was a thing called Zoom, like a little review zine, and I'd sort of sent it off there. I made some sort of attempt to sort of get it out and distribute it, but not really, because that's never really anything that I'm any very interested or good at. Well, I'm pretty terrible at it, you know. And also, you know, I did it, and I was like, okay, I did it, and you know, then later I came to the States. I sort of did a few more, I think, you know, like so. I in the end I did sort of 7 like black and white photocopied zines, you know, and I would go to Alternative Press Expo as much as it went, you know, and I did, you know, make some effort to get them out. But I'm never very good at getting them out. I sort of got them online, you know, I did, you know, and then, you know, started doing it daily online. I mean, I just sort of stuck with it, but I thought I would retool it, I guess, when it went online. And, you know, so that went through some different iterations. Yeah, I was always trying to find where I thought, like, where I was really happy with it. You know, it's funny, I was more critical in my early work. Some of the black and white stuff. When I look back at it now, I'm like, I wasn't really as far off as I sort of thought I was. But I felt like, I'm really far off where I want to be.
When did you go online? and do a daily?
Probably about as soon as I could.
No,
like, I
I
would
mean,
go up to
what
like
year?
before 95, like in 1994, I had an email address at my friend's house in London.
Okay.
But Chuck, you were doing it originally as individual issues for the first little while, right? Weren't they like issue 1, issue 2 kind of things? Or
Which ones?
The first few issues of Pewfell, weren't they done like comic book issues with?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, they were done as like black and white, sort of
Yeah.
stapled together, photocopied issues. They never had proper copies, like as a comic. I never had them printed as a comic.
But the online web strips, when did that start? What year was that?
So I mean, I probably put some of those early zines, like probably scanned them and started putting them on as soon as there was like a capability to do that. So, you know, it's hard to say when it was like, when wasn't it on the internet?
Okay.
You know,
Well,
it wasn't really. It was on the internet as soon as I possibly.
Were you looking at other web
I could get a
cartoonists?
scanner and scan them in and put them on somewhere. Then I put them on.
Did you look at other web cartoonists at the time? Were you looking at people like Penny Arcade or, well, I think that's one of the earliest ones.
Well, they were nice to me. They were nice. Said nice things about Pewfell. I didn't really have, they were like about like video games. You know, so some of the popular guys, them and PvP were sort of about video games, and I was less interested in video games. In fact, I deliberately didn't do video games.
Okay. Well, so I guess you eventually set up a website and you started doing this. You had a published strip every day.
Yeah, so I just want to say also, like Scott Kurtz also was always really great to me. Those guys were, they said nice things about people, and well, I didn't meet the Penny Arcade guys, but Scott Kurtz, I met him a couple times. Always like very nice guy. Yeah, so.
But we were on a site called when I was doing the strips for him, we were on a site called moderntales.com, which was a good hosting site for a lot of different webcomics, actually. And yeah, that's when it was more of a daily strip format of like 4 panels a strip kind of thing. You were doing that before I started, right? Like I didn't.
Yes. So I started. So yes. So some of the earlier stories, they're like the ones that are in the books. So the first Pewfell book. I didn't know if I have it right there. Oh well, I've got the omnibus one. Here we go. So the first Pewfell book, some of these strips. There are earlier strips of these because I actually did. There's some strips that's not even in here that are even earlier. Like Fog was sort of different, and there's a few sort of different things. Jackal was different too. That I had done after like my first. So I did my first black and white zine. Oh no, actually not even first. There's an earlier story that never even was in a zine that's not even really finished. So there is a lot more of it. One day I'm going to do a Pewfell Volume 0 and republish this one in proper order.
Just
so this one, but then I mashed up the order a bit of the early ones to like present it like sort of make it more where it got to. Like once I sort of started working more with you. So like before I was always a bit haphazard doing this, that, and the other. So I did sort of some short strips that made it in here. And then when I put it into this book, you wrote some connecting scenes and stories. So that the first book sort of reads like as a book rather than sort of, now I'm doing this, now I'm doing that. And then I did the second and third books myself where I wrote, that's where I was sort of flowing along, doing them as a daily and telling this story that it was a big story. I didn't really know what I was doing. I just sort of knew where I was going in the end, but I didn't really know how I was
Chuck,
doing
if someone wanted to buy that book and read the entire Pewfell, where would they get that book?
That's very easy. Well, okay, there's 2 ways you can get Adam. Maybe Adam can tell it. Well, one way is at Amazon. But Adam Prosser's got a way that will make me more money, I believe. So, Adam, why don't you tell us a little bit now about Heroeslive and what you're doing with that? Yes.
Yeah. So I've become the comics editor and compiler of a website called Heroeslive.tv, which is a streaming site. They have videos and people are using it. So it's kind of an indie Netflix, as it were. Like people can use it to people submit their like film festival movies and short films and web series and things, and we're hosting it. But we also host comics. And so we're building up a comics library. So this is something that's launched just quite recently. Heroeslive.tv, it's right down there. And yeah, so in fact the entire collection of Pewfell is there online. You can if by subscribing you can read the entire thing of Pewfell. That's something it's got my work as well. I don't have Star Force Pinnacle up there yet, but it will be up soon. I've got some of my other stuff. There's a comic I did called Night Beach, which actually here, let me show you guys Night Beach. This is a comic I did that is about what there was a television series that spun out of Baywatch, which was called Baywatch Nights, that existed in, you may have heard of it.
Dale was the viewer of that. He watched this show and he watched Baywatch Nights.
Yeah, and without having seen it, I just knew that he ended up, like he started a private eye company, like David Hasselhoff's character. Despite being a lifeguard, he then became a private eye, and then he went on to fight supernatural entities in the later
series. Didn't care anymore at that point. It's like,
yeah,
okay, we ran out of ideas. We got to like just do something that we call.
Yeah, well, it's because X-Files was popular. Yeah, exactly. Makes money. But actually, so without having seen the show, I just sort of said, okay, that sounds insane. And so I just wrote kind of what I thought it might be like if there were lifeguards fighing the supernatural. So I've created I did a comic with a guy called Dan Butler who wrote it for me, or who drew it for me. Sorry, I wrote it.
I know what I was going to ask you. Have you seen that movie? Well, there's a couple of things this guy's done. He did the movie Brisby Bear, and then he's got the show on Netflix. Kyle Mooney. He did Brisby Bear, and then he has this show. It's like sort of 90s animated cartoons, and then the sort of host segments that link them together. You know, he's very interesting. He's very funny, but I know you quite like that same sort of era that he seems to like, and like the sort of entertainment of that era. You know.
No, I've never heard of that. That's interesting.
Okay, yeah, you should definitely seek out Kyle Mooney. And like Brisby Bear is like his movie, and then like his series on Netflix in particular. Do you know what I'm talking about, Dale?
I know what Netflix is.
Yeah.
I know what
Baywatch
Nights is.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, I didn't mean to distract you. I'll find a link for that. But yes, sorry, go on and tell us about more about.
Well, it's just
what is it called?
It's called Night Beach. I'm trying to share some images from it, but I feel like it's not working very well. But yeah, it's just a goof. It's basically a place where there's a rookie lifeguard, and they go to the beach at night, where of course you don't usually need a lot of lifeguards on the beach at night, but these guys are there fighting various supernatural entities. There's only one issue so far. We're working on the second issue, which involves them fighting a literal giant white whale, I'm gonna who is also the mafia boss of the town. Yeah, it's very po-faced. It's completely ridiculous, but then I play it totally straight. There is, of course, a scene where they run towards the camera in slow motion. That does happen, of course. But yeah, so we're kind of building on that. That's also on Heroeslive, and the anthology I mentioned, Strange Romance, is there as well. But we've got a bunch of different people on Heroeslive as well. And as I say, all of Chuck's Pewfell is there. There's a few other. Thank you. Yeah, is that it? No, that's.
Well, the reason I thought about it, because you didn't like, he does a thing with like sort of Thundercats. This sort of character here, this little sort of lion character is like a Thundercat thing. Sort of animated like Thundercats and sort of Teenage Turtles. But I remember you had like an idea. You wanted to do something about sort of Saturday morning cartoons and stuff. So you're ahead of your time, Adam. That, you have these ideas and then people take them.
Yeah, I'm working. We're hoping to launch a Kickstarter. I've got someone who was, in this case, it was someone who was writing D Elms, who's someone I worked with on Strange Romance. She's got an idea for kind of essentially it's like an 80s cartoon, but like the comic spin-off of a cartoon, like you would have seen in those. So it's sort of a weird cyberpunk fantasy, very much He-Man. It's the kind of thing you would have seen in an 80s cartoon. It's all about pirates, called Shizar of the Seas, which we're hoping to launch as a Kickstarter soon, but it's a lot of work. But yeah,
I know, it is a lot of work. I don't know. I mean, I'm not doing the work.
But yeah, so I'm hyping Heroeslive.tv. That's a big thing. So that's just we're growing. Every week we're adding new stuff. We've got my good friend Philip Rice has a comic called the Apex Society, which is riffing on sort of old pulp type adventure characters. It's a bit of a riff on League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, actually, except most of his characters are original, but he has some really cool ideas for action adventure heroes who are in the pulp mode. I've got my friends Ing and Charlotte Finn are doing a comic called Brand Echo, which is a webcomic, which is a very high concept thing about a woman who's basically who created a video game, I believe, and basically had it taken away from her, and her lover was a major model for the video game, and so she feels like her lover's been stolen from her as well. And then she starts having these dreams of the logos and images and ideas coming to life and attacking her. And it's sort of, I don't even know exactly where it's going, but they've got a sort of a story within the story of this thing called Starship Scorpio, which is kind of like a toy line and a Saturday morning cartoon that people loved at the time. Anyway, it's really there's a lot of really good stuff there. Sorry, Dan. Yeah.
That's okay. Adam, are you familiar with OSI 74 and Cinema Insomnia?
Nope.
Okay, for this thing that you're working on, Heroeslive TV, this is just an aside. I would suggest that you research Cinema Insomnia and OSI 74 and perhaps talk to them sometime, because they're doing something that's on a tangent to what you're doing.
Okay. What is that exactly?
It's a TV network.
I see. So it's like a streaming thing?
Yeah. You can find it on Twitch.
OSI 74? Yeah.
And Cinema Insomnia.
Okay.
And look up Mr. Lobo, Lobo.
Okay. And so it's just like they stream sort of like what, cult flicks and stuff? Is that?
No, they have their own content.
Oh, okay.
So that's why I thought you might be interested in researching that.
Okay, that's cool. Well, like I say, I mean, I'm kind of the comics department rather than the video and film department. But yeah, it's something that's going to be really cool. So yeah, you can go and you can watch streaming video and you can download comics. And we're just started and we're just trying to build up a subscriber base. So if you're at all interested, please go and sign up. If if we can just get a few people signing up, it's gonna help us really break loose and we'll be blowing the roof off the joint. And like I say, all this stuff that we've been talking about here is there to view on heroeslive.tv. So check it out.
All right, great. Well, yeah, I don't know if anybody out there, a couple of people looking in. We'll take your comments and questions if you have any. Otherwise, we'll take Dale's comments and questions. Yeah, that sounds great. Yes, so that's very good. Yeah, well, yes, because Dale was asking about where Pewfell, like Pewfell.com, but yeah, I'm rerunning it on Instagram right now. So at Pewfell. So we're sort of going through. I keep rerunning it through the years. Takes several years to run on a daily basis, and yeah, it's just sort of starting its run on Instagram, and it's doing nicely there. And thank you to everybody who has liked and followed us there so far. And yeah, Adam, I'm hoping you don't really come on Instagram much, so Adam. I tried to find you on Instagram.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not an Instagram guy. I need to be for this. I have to start really promoting us on Instagram, and I haven't. But yeah,
it's good to be on Twitter. It's hard to do both.
Yeah,
I couldn't like Twitter. Like Twitter's more verbal, Instagram's more visual.
Yeah,
I mean Twitter. They both can be both, but
Yeah. Well, Instagram's obviously good for artists, but the trouble is, I've had this, like, you have to do it through your mobile, and it's like, well, all my files are on my computer. I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to have them on my mobile phone. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. I could do it, but
that is a nuisance about it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Yeah, but you're quite active on Twitter, are you?
I am. Yes, I'm at Prankster36.
Okay.
And yeah, check if you want to check me out. I'm, hey, maybe Pewfell. Hey, Chuck, maybe you can retweet or you can do a follow Friday for me and tell people to follow me. Yes. But yeah,
I should do. I don't know. I occasionally go on Twitter and post something, and then I'm like, oh no, I don't think I'll.
We were a wise man. It's not. It's a horrible place, and it should not exist.
Well, Chuck, we talked about how long the strip had been running. How long did it take to do a strip? You were doing this every day. Would you send? Would Adam send you a script? Would you send him the idea, then he would write it? What was the day like when you created a strip? Would you do one a day or do 5 on the weekend, or how do you do it?
Yeah. So I started putting them on. So I did those early sort of strips, as web strips. I guess the first ones that transitioned, I did there's a story about Spire Castle Spring and the summer one that sort of finished off the first book. And then at some point I thought I should just do it on as a daily strip. So then I sort of tried to reimagine it as a sort of single page. I was just going to do a single page, kind of letter size, and have it split in up to 6 panels. And I just sort of charged in and started doing that. And again, there's probably some good ones at the beginning that are not in the book that I'm because I just was trying different things. And I didn't really know. But eventually I started sort of, okay, here's this sort of story. And I got through this long story. And then I had this idea, so that's the first sort of 3 books of Pewfell. And then Drain of Chaos is where Adam came on board. And I had a big idea for Drain of Chaos. And I think I outlined, I kind of knew, this was really going to be a sort of long, epic, thought out story. And, but I started doing it and I was going along and I guess, I was sort of quite happy, but I just never felt I never really studied writing. I didn't know much about writing. And I felt and I was wanting to work with a writer and I looked at some of what Adam's writing. And as I said, I thought, oh yeah, he's really, between Amazon Space Rangers and Night Gallery, what was it again?
Night Shift.
Night Shift.
It's called Night Shift. Yeah.
Yes, Night Shift. Between those two, I was like, okay, that's is that exactly in the zone I want to do. And I, and I put an ad, and you responded, and I said, okay, great, send me some scripts. You sent me a few of them, which I did, as you said, and I was a bit at first I was a bit yes, those are quite good, but they still weren't quite exactly what I was looking for. But so we sort of, I sort of worked with you a bit. I think, I felt over the initial period, but I sort of liked them because they were sort of helping me. And then we sort of learned to work in a way where I was sort of controlling the story. I felt or we had a big sort of soup of story that was in a document, and then we'd sort of tease out or what I felt was the sort of nylon thread of the actual sort of thing, which I'd say, oh, this is what we want to do, and then Adam would write some scripts based on those. And then at first, sometimes I spend a bit of time, sometimes oh, I'm not going to try and change it, or should it be this or that. But I think over a while, I sort of learned how to sort of okay, what were the things? You have a little tendency to go more super wacky than I wanted.
we ended pretty wacky.
What I pinned it down was you were quite happy to go, whereas I always want things to sort of somewhat obey some sort of logical law.
Well, Adam,
I still like intensity, but I thought you really had a much more sort of doing a kind of broader story that people
and your logic
understood, and you had a sort of clear idea of who the characters should be, I think, than I did. So which I really appreciate that. So I learned, so I think I learned a lot from Adam's take on doing it, and I think by the end we had a very sort of good system, as I say, so we would sort of work on this sort of overall massive story. So that I felt I had enough control of where it was before then he would take the script. So sometimes I would write, this is the plot that I want. And then Adam was very clever at sort of condensing it into a few short panels, getting everything in there in a like minimum number of panels and dialogue. And then I could just focus on like drawing them and, making the gag work as well as possible. Yeah. And Adam was much better at like sort of putting a punchline. Like, I was like, oh, I think I understand it a lot better now. But like then I didn't really feel like I understood like writing a gag or a punchline.
Yeah, I gotta say, if you're doing a daily comic strip with 4 panels and then a punchline, that is probably one of the hardest forms of comics to write, as I have learned. Like, I would much rather write this sprawling thing with multiple pages or whatever, because you can just let the gags fall where they may. But if it's like every 4 panels, it's got to be boom, 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 punchline, boom, 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 punchline.
Yeah.
And you got to be telling a story and keeping the ball rolling forward and everything, but not too slowly and not too fast. And it's a lot. And you only have fairly small area to work in and so on. It's very
Adam,
yeah.
When
So
you
so then
see
Adam
the-
came on board. So I can sort of pretty much describe, I can know exactly where like it happens. Okay, so that I sort of got on. So Pewfell was like working down in the sewer patrol. He has to work in the sewer patrol, and then this is kind of where you come in, doing some of these sort of like working in the sewer patrol sort of stuff. And then then after that, so then it's Pewfell. Okay, so then things happen which I wouldn't have done, which you did, which I loved. That you like you have him take the potion where he gets like all strong for a little bit.
That was my first storyline,
and all this. So we bring in Baron Samdi, who I love as well. Baron Samdi, I love. He was great. He's like he was our resident sort of sociopath, like zombie mad dictator who sort of takes control of the city.
When you were writing,
I don't know where we got into the Privy Flush Deluxe, like this whole bit with the Privy Flush Deluxe. And then I was like, okay, so this bit, this bit here with the long pipe. Well, that's another sort of proto search and find drawing there. But that was from my latest sort of redraw of it.
Well,
but
you also went back and redrew
I was like,
some
okay,
of
wait,
it,
Adam's
right?
going too silly here. I didn't quite know where you were going. And then when we got there, I was like, okay, basically. So after that, I felt like I started taking a firmer hand.
Adam, when you
But I didn't want to discourage you earlier on. So but then I was like, okay, now I need to sort of, I need to rein that aspect of him in a little, or be more clear about like where we were going. Because to me, I don't know. How do you feel about the long sewer pipe?
No, that was funny. I just
Well,
went for
maybe you're right.
whatever
I
was
don't know how
funny.
you complain. So this is just
Dale,
purely-
sorry, what were you saying there?
Adam, when you wrote the script with Chuck and you gave Chuck the script, like a lot of comic scripts will have breakdowns by panel and then a visual description of what's going on in the panel. Did you do that?
Yes, because it was a 4-page panel script and Chuck knew the characters in the world, like I didn't go particularly in depth with visual descriptions. We usually had the general idea of what we were going to do visually. Like that was kind of Chuck's department anyway.
Yeah, that was my department. Was like that's what I meant. Like thinking ahead about what are the scenes that I want to draw.
Yeah,
that's usually like how my mind is sort of. What are the scenes I want to draw? I think some of this stuff with the gnomes. I think I did more of the gnomes. I felt I was more happy with the gnomes, and then and then I was more happy with you doing sort of more Pewfell and Tina and them a lot. I felt like.
But I did say, like,
remember
okay,
differently.
panel 1, this happens. Panel 2, that happens. Like, it's that. I mean, you have to do that with the 4-panel gag because it doesn't really work otherwise.
Yeah.
With a larger multi-page thing, you can maybe get a little bit more. We did actually towards the end, I think, when we stopped doing it as a strip and we started doing it more as an issue. And I think you started breaking them up more on your own pacing rather than me telling you panel by panel, I think. Yeah.
Well, yes. So what happened was, okay. So we had like, okay. So we got here. We got to we did the sewer pipe, but then we paid it off. Like in the end, we sort of paid it off fairly well. At the end of like what's the sort of first book of Drain of Chaos, really, where they get the hose and they flush all the invading army of chaos off. You're right. So that's the end of my sort of first kind of book that I would say that we wrote, like where you came on and we did that and we got it there, but there was sort of all this much more story to tell. But then we got into this good bit of the city being under siege and the gnomes running their play and all sorts of things. So I was all very happy with that. So then it goes very well, I think, and now I'm very happy with all of it. Yes. So yes, then we're still on the siege. They're on the barricades. Half the city's occupied. Pewfell's trying to live his life, but he's living on the wrong side of the barricades. But he's also serving. He's also serving Baron Samedi. Bish is doing his loony stuff.
Chuck, when you would get a script from Adam, how long would it take to go from the script to a finished strip?
It's hard to say. I don't know. We were doing them every day, but then these larger panels are when I redrew it. So I was doing them in black and white, and then I later spent a long time mostly listening to Wheel of Time on audio, coloring them in. I did listen to the whole of Wheel of Time. Pretty much got me through coloring.
Okay.
This was one I always liked. When Pewfell's like, he's the spokesman now for Baron Samedi. The city's under siege. We were getting a little political. There was all sorts of stuff about invading of Iraq and stuff like that we got in there. Yeah. So great. Then Bish, the army of zombies, and the city finally falls to the Chaos Horde. Pewfell's holed up in the privies with Baron Samedi. Baron Samedi tries to kill him. Pewfell accidentally kills Baron Samedi. The gnome now the Chaos Lords take over the city. They do their play. The gnomes do their play for the Chaos Lords. That's all. Oh yeah, I'm so happy with all this. Then finally we go on a dungeon quest to the bottom, the under part of the city. So they're finally getting some 10-foot poles. So Adam, I want to have a bit where they're getting their equipment and getting 10-foot poles and doing all this. And then I really enjoyed all the gags with the 10-foot pole. They go through. Yeah, this is great. And then they find the sort of sci-fi sort of control room at the bottom. This pig Yvonne. This is all to do with Bish's cult story. And then it sort of breaks out. Yeah, they've discovered this artifact, the Thrones of Chaos. The Pewfell. Meanwhile, Tina's been having twins and all this, and this is all going on. So then Noma's now having a massive stadium concert. So yes, by this point, I sort of thought, the strip format, we're sort of breaking out of the strip format. And we're getting near the end. I was like, oh my god, I'm so what's getting. And I felt like some of the panels need to be more epic, but so I did them large. Well, but then I've totally reformatted them a number of times. So when I did them in the color, I really, I sliced and remixed them fairly. But I did do them larger because at this point I'm like, oh, this is sort of going in a book. They're going to be large. Baron Samedi finally saves the day with his intelligence. Somehow I did have a proper ending.
By the time you were drawing those,
we had a proper ending and lovely epilogue. So yes, so I would say the writing. It was 50-50 really, or probably it's hard to say because certainly we split the story. Adam wrote most of the actual scripts. There was a few scripts I would say that I just did totally, but but mostly. I do I kept a record of it, so I do. I do have it sort of somewhere, which ones were written and who did what.
You did those black and white for a daily strip, and then later you rescanned them and redrew some of the panels for the comic, and then colored them.
Yes. Colored the whole thing and formatted it for a book.
When you were doing just the daily strip, black and white, do you have any idea how long it would take you to do a strip? A few hours, all night?
It's hard because I would sort of work. We would work in batches, wouldn't we, Adam? I don't know. I would set. We had our big thing. I would send you. You'd send me probably about 10 or so at a time, wouldn't you?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'd sort of
you
going
would
on that,
do
and I'd
one
do
a
them.
day. You would do them
on
in
a
a batch.
page, and I might get 2 inked in one sort of evening inking session. That's what I would try and do.
Okay. And that was still back in the days of pen and ink on paper.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm always sort of drawing in pen and ink, really.
What happened to all the originals?
I have them all.
Do you ever sell them?
I would sell one if anybody wanted to buy one. I've got 1 or 2 of I've gone, but yeah.
Okay.
Well,
How
that's
are we doing for time here? Yeah, we're at
this
5
is right
o'clock.
at an hour. So
Sorry.
yeah, why don't we wrap it up then?
All right.
and-
Well, Adam, yeah, sorry,
Sorry,
sorry, I was waffling on a lot there, and I wasn't really getting your input. And I really wanted to sort of ask you about your
Yes.
memories of it all, and
Well,
I hope you had fun doing it anyway, and
Oh,
I hope you're proud
absolutely.
of it. I think we should be very proud of what we did on that.
yeah, I think it's great. I really urge people to sign up for Heroeslive.tv and to read the entire thing. It's got great. There's lots of material. There's like 25 issues worth of material essentially.
Yeah, and then we
and
continued on, and we haven't finished. I don't know. There's more to be done, but well, we need
Someday,
everybody subscribing to Heroes Live. We've got three viewers out there. Thank you for tuning in, people. Thanks a lot. It's been great. It's so fun to have you, Adam. It's great to see you again, Dale. Thanks for asking such great questions as always. All right, so I'm gonna
Nice to meet you, Dale.
Pleasure to meet you, Adam. I'll see you around.
Yes.
All
Hopefully
right,
we'll do this again. We can get more into Pewfell, into my side of things at some point.
Yes,
So-
yes. Well, we would like to do more and talk more about Pewfell. But yes, so go follow at Pewfell or go back Itsy Bitsy Spider on Kickstarter.
And
Thank you very much.
Prankster36 on Twitter if you like, and Heroeslive.tv.
Yes.
Bye, kids.
Bye-bye.
I'm just going up this water spout, y'all. Y'all, hope it don't
The
rain.
itsy bitsy spider climbed up the water spout. Down came the rain and washed the spider out. Out came the sun and dried up all the rain. So the itsy bitsy spider climbed up the spout again.
I'm just going up this water spout, y'all. Hope it don't rain. I'm an itsy bitsy spider. I'm also a good hider. Y'all ain't gonna find me.
The itsy bitsy spider climbed up the water spout. Down came the rain and washed the spider out. Out came the sun and dried up all the rain. So the itsy bitsy spider climbed up the spout again.
Going up this,
Up the spout again.
going up this.
Up the spout again.